Coming up on Market Shares, President Donald Trump is threatening to hike tariffs on imports from China, how global markets are responding.
And journalists across major networks are turning in their press passes as the Pentagon limits access, how news outlets are responding to these new rules.
Plus, the Dow Jones closes slightly higher to end the week as traders try to move past credit concerns that sparked a big sell-off in banks. Hold on to your wallets because Market Shares starts right now. Good afternoon and welcome into Market Shares. I'm Alex Burstein.
And I'm Ethan Kraut.
Well, we start tonight looking at the markets as the bell has rung to close out the week, and surprise, it is all green. Really surprising after an up and down week for the banks. There was a couple of different things that really hurt earlier in the week and rebounded by Friday. We'll start off with some geopolitical tensions. The U.S. and China just continue to have some problems sorting out the trade stuff, and it didn't work early on. We saw Wednesday, Thursday go into the red, some dips, but it clears out by the end of the week.
Yeah, not only some trade stuff, we had some banking issues yesterday, specifically some regional banks, Zion and Western Alliance, took on some bad loans they announced. We saw a bunch of big sell-off in that segment, but today investors bet on these regional banks and brought back the indexes up to the green for the week.
And it's a good sign because there was some early forecasts this week from different economic experts from the U.S. and it's saying there may be some inflation in the coming months, and these job gains that were really strong to start off the year and then kind of dipped quickly, now that's likely to continue. There's not job gains expected over the next couple of months. Because of that, that can usually turn this to red, but the markets have stabilized at least for the next week or so.
Yeah, hopefully we keep seeing green in the next coming weeks.
Well, it's time to look at our market movers today and a couple of different stocks that have had some big weeks. We'll start in the red with JP Morgan, one of the largest banks in the United States. They do work with Chase as well, so a lot of money going into JP Morgan. And as you can see, not the best week. And a lot of it is because some hard language coming out of their Investors Day on Tuesday, usually a day where you're spreading the wealth, you're saying, oh, our company's doing great. Instead, their CEO warning that there's bugs in the U.S. economy, saying that there's a bad path forward for money in the U.S. And because of that, there's these warning signs. The bank doesn't love it, and the investors don't either.
Yeah, kind of similar to what we were seeing with the regional banks. Not all bad news from Jamie Dimon, though. He announced this week that JP Morgan is making a $10 billion investment in industries that they find vital for the U.S. These industries include defense and aerospace, what they're calling frontier industries such as AI. They also have supply chain and energy, which is batteries. So they're calling this the Security and Resiliency Initiative and really trying to invest in industries that are crucial to the U.S. economy.
And it's interesting to see that because you have these words that aren't a direct attack on the government, they aren't a direct attack on the economy, but I mean, you can read between the lines. There's not a lot of confidence right now from the banks in where the economy is going. To see that and then see a day or two later these big investments into national security, big investments into just money in total, that's an interesting sign to see that the banks are saying, okay, things are not going great right now, but we have confidence that it could rebound in the coming weeks.
Yeah, we've seen it at this administration, lots of different things fluctuating a lot, so JP Morgan trying to get in and some of these. Now, moving into the food delivery industry, DoorDash, they're in the red this week, but I don't think investors will have much minding that because last week they hit a 52-week high, nearly $290 a share. That's also growing near their share price, nearly 450% year-end. Really great year so far for DoorDash, despite the lower than they're expecting this week.
Yeah, and you can see they've been pretty stable over the last couple of days, and because of that, you might see the rebound coming really soon. An interesting part, they're really leaning onto AI, and they're really leaning into this next generation of technology. Announcing this week, they're going to use Waymo, which is an automated car. That's right, self-driving cars to help deliver stuff. Starting in Phoenix, it's a big brand, these driverless cars in Phoenix. They're going to try to deliver their food like that. And surprisingly enough, it seems like there's actually some confidence in that. And it really shows this is something that's new for the markets. They do trust AI. They are giving it a chance. And because of that, it's kind of stabling out this DoorDash stock.
Yeah, that goes along with DoorDash's efforts to cut costs, specifically in their human workforce. Also in Phoenix, about a month ago, they announced that they'll be starting to test out robot delivery drivers, where it's a little robot that drives down the sidewalk, comes up to your door, pick up the food, and right out, and you're good to go.
It's interesting to see the stocks not dipping after that, because this is a company that was built on people and the workforce. Now they're trying to go lower than that. We have one more stock to look at here today, and as you see by the lights, it is going to be green. Looking at United Airlines, who posted better than expected numbers in the third quarter of the year. They didn't quite meet their expectations, but if you look year over year, a 3% increase in quarter three, and it really shows what United is doing well. They're doing really, really good over the next couple of months because there's a lot of airlines that are struggling right now. Southwest trying to change the way they do their airlines. United's been stable, and it's helped them out a ton.
Yeah, so not all great news for United, though. Their CEO, Scott Kirby, said that it hasn't hurt them yet, but there's some worries within the airline industry that the government shutdown could impact bookings. Now, a lot of TSA agents and air traffic controllers are not getting paid during this shutdown, so there's going to be some shortages causing some big delays. We've already seen that in disruptions in Nashville and Burbank, so people are worried that their flight might get canceled, so maybe they won't book with United.
Yeah, lots of worries in the airline industry, but United holding steady for now. Well, President Donald Trump is adding fuel to the ongoing fire right now with China, and there's relations that have been really struggling. The U.S. and China trade tensions continue, and our Caleb Plank joins us right now. Caleb, what's been happening with this trade war?
Yeah, guys. The U.S. and China's trade tensions continue to escalate as pressure from both sides persists. After China announced increased restrictions on rare earth metals, President Donald Trump responded by threatening to impose 100% tariffs on Chinese goods starting November 1st. The importing of these earth metals helps supply most modern-day technologies, including semiconductors, robots, and jets. In terms of leverage, this move by China threatens resources that go towards the U.S. and European defense industries. The new restrictions would require governments and businesses to seek licenses from Beijing to trade for these minerals. As part of the U.S. government's response, they could take equity stakes in the domestic rare earth supply chain to reduce the reliance on China. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also says the Trump administration will set a legal price minimum to protect rare earths.
And for 20 years, anytime anyone in a market-based economy stood up a processor refiner, China came in, cut price, and put them out of business. So we're going to set price floors and the forward buying to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
President Trump and China's President Xi Jinping are still set to meet at the end of this month, despite the verge of a full-on trade war.
So now we welcome Caleb back to the desk here. So, Caleb, big concern with these new restrictions is how they'll impact the defense industries with all these metals. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, these earth minerals and metals, they go towards building a lot of defense supplies and equipment, such as fighter jets. That's a big resource in them. And so I definitely think there is a bit of a threat there. You could see the U.S. maybe being a little more lenient just because this does come to, national defense and safety of the U.S. And I think, but this isn't new to the U.S. We've seen this before. They just added restrictions, so a lot of minerals have already been restricted. So I think, as we've seen back in July, the U.S. took an equity stake in MP Materials, which is the largest U.S. rare earth material supplier here. So I think we could see more of that, and I just think more reliance away from China, whether that be other allies or reusing the current materials we already have here. So I do think there's a threat, but I don't think it's anything new, and I just think if we can strengthen our domestic production, we'll be able to deal with the threats from China.
And then Caleb, it is a two-horse race. This is the U.S. and the China who have these tensions. But when you look at it, these are going to have effects on all countries and their productions. How is global production going to be affected by this?
Yeah, so I mean, it's affecting every single country, and a lot of countries have been hesitant to get into talks now just because the licensing process from the Chinese government is requesting a lot of corporate information that a lot of countries don't want to give up. And so I think we are going to see many countries move away from this reliance on China. So invest, as we're seeing here in the U.S., investing in their own domestic supply chains. And yeah, I mean, these metals go into lots of technologies, the little chips that you have in your iPhones or, many technologies, vehicles, especially electric vehicles. So there's a chance for a little, we'll see a cutback on some of those productions just because, China was a big supplier. But I think seeing what the US is doing and what other countries can do, they could start to definitely build up their own production. And it might take a couple years. I mean, China's spent billions of dollars over the years building their industry. So it might not be an immediate, growth, but I think it'll bounce back.
Well, thank you, Caleb. Coming up on Market Shares, our Ben Bassick sits down with the Managing Director of AI Innovation at Clyde, Anthony LaFaus. Stay tuned.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
Women are bad with money.
That's what the world's been saying for centuries. But now,
We've got something to say.
Save it. Save the old-fashioned advice, the empty excuses. It's all worthless, unlike us.
To our fellow females, it is time to save ourselves by saving our money.
Contributing to our futures. Investing in our independence.
Until we're no longer 80%
more likely than men to live in poverty in retirement.
So again, we say to that, save it.
The falsehoods, the feelings of fault, then the funds.
Learn how to save for your retirement at wesaysaveit.org.
Welcome back to Market Shares. Joining me now is Managing Director for AI Innovation at Clyde, Anthony LaFaus. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I want to start off here and kind of talk about AI and communications. We have data analytics and algorithms that are now being run by AI. Students may feel less a part of that process. What do you say to Newhouse students and communications professionals concerned about being replaced in an AI world?
That's very similar to saying you'd be replaced by a computer or replaced by an Excel. These are simply tools that you need to learn to use to be a more effective communicator. There's a lot of quotes around there, but one of my favorite is, you won't lose your job to AI, but you'll lose it to someone who can use it better than you.
I want to ask about that. Should students be approaching AI as a tool, as a competency, as a profession? I mean, is it similar to something like email in the 90s, where it just became so ingrained in work culture, and it's something that people know how to use, but they don't necessarily know the in and outs of the behind the scenes work? How should they approach AI?
They should approach it as a tool. You don't know how a toaster works, yet you use the toaster every day. You should understand a fundamental on how it works, so you can look for things like bias and misinformation. But at the end of the day, knowing how to use it as a tool is more important than how it works. Like driving a car. You don't have to know all the ins and outs of a combustion engine to drive a car effectively.
How do students start approaching that issue? How do they master AI? How do they become proficient in it as a tool?
You have to know how it kind of works, right? We've been trained for years to think about SEO and how to use Google search, create a prompt a certain way or query a certain way. You have to detrain your mind and start talking to it and using it as an assistant. So I often say the first thing you should do is just go out and create some fun pictures with it, create some fun videos, use it as a fun tool so you're more comfortable using it. And then as you start to work into your work environment, your learning environment, you've got the basics down. No one taught you how to Google something, but you know how to be a really good Googler of things, right, because you've used it for years.
I want to ask, because you mentioned using AI as an assistant. I mean, these chatbots are being valued at very high amounts. OpenAI is valued at $500 billion. I imagine a valuation like that only happens when these algorithms maximize user engagement and retention and keep people coming back. Is that how those algorithms work?
No, so no one's making money on AI. Yes, ChatGPT is evaluated high, Google is evaluated high, but people are making money on the infrastructure of AI, delivering it as a service, not as AI. So NVIDIA makes a ton of money off of AI because they're making the hardware that runs it. The CEO of NVIDIA came out and said the future is going to be full of plumbers and electricians powering these data centers. That's where a lot of the money is. The evaluation comes from what those companies could do. You know, AI licensed out to manufacturers, AI licensed out to agricultural clients, AI licensed out to you and I is never going to make them enough money.
Is there any legal framework that you're seeing be put in place in your line of work that shows when AI stops becoming an assistant and starts to become an enabler?
California is trying to pass a few laws around that. The issue then becomes those laws are then transferable to other products. And this is really sort of the big legal debate of, is a manufacturer responsible for a product after it leaves manufacturing? Do not know where that's going to go, but I know being in DC, talking with folks from both sides of the aisle, it is the one thing that everyone agrees that we have to get right. It is the next arms race, and people on both sides of the aisle don't ask if we should, they ask how do we do it right.
The whole conversation that I remember hearing when all these things started rolling out with artificial intelligence was that these LLMs were going to take care of the things that we didn't want to take care of. Kind of those like the work side of things, the data, the algorithms, the raking through interviews in my case, right? But now we're seeing it kind of take a pivot to the more interpersonal and the arts and the communications. Does that go against the initial idea of AI, that it was meant simply to be a productivity tool?
No. It is. If that is what people are creating, it's fulfilling its need. If people want to use it for the art, the creative side of things, then it's doing what it's designed to do. I have a good friend of mine who gave me a quote. He said that AIs are really good at doing what computers are normally bad at, and really bad at doing what they're good at. So compiling data, going through unstructured data to find information, AIs are great at that. Asking complicated math questions, maybe not, they're getting better. The other point that I would end on all of that is this is the worst they're ever going to be. Like everything you're seeing today is the worst the AI is ever going to be.
Is there anything else you want to say on the topic of artificial intelligence in communications in any field in that regard?
If you're not watching tech, if you're not following Google I/O, if you're not watching Meta's conferences, you are not being a professional communicator. Our job is to influence the public and to get information in front of them. And that used to be the media, and now it's technology. We are not media relations specialists. We are public relations specialists.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Well, we'll be back after this quick break.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, but with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. And you can change the outcome. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
Welcome back to Market Shares. The Trump administration is bailing out Argentina with a $20 billion lifeline. Earlier this week, Argentina's President Javier Milei met with Trump and other U.S. officials, including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. In a post on X, Besant said that the U.S. finalized a $20 billion swap with Argentina's central bank, where the U.S. Treasury will exchange dollars for pesos. The expectation is that those dollars will eventually be paid back. This all comes as the U.S. federal government is nearing 3 weeks of being shut down, and U.S. businesses and industries continue to reel from Trump's ongoing trade war.
Now this bailout comes as Argentina is at risk of a financial collapse. The country's currency fell sharply after President Milei's party faced a significant defeat in last month's election. The losses shook investors' confidence in Milei's ability to see through his economic reforms. The Trump administration argues that Argentina's financial conflict could spill over into other economies if it is not contained quickly. The next elections in Argentina take place on October 26th. Earlier this week, the U.S. Army launched a program to build micronuclear reactors in partnership with the Defense Innovation Unit. According to the Army, the microreactors will be commercially owned and operated with the goal of helping developers scale up their business.
Nuclear stocks are trading mixed as a reaction to this news. Shares of NuScale, a small reactor developer, surged more than 16%. Oklo and Nano Nuclear fell more than 1% and 3%, while the uranium company Citrus jumped 10%. Investors are speculating on the fortune of some of these companies as none of them have released a reactor. Artificial intelligence power demand and Trump's executive orders are fueling a wave of market enthusiasm surrounding nuclear power. Instagram is cracking down on what millions of young people can see by aligning its teen account safety settings with the guidelines for PG-13 movies. The platform launched teen accounts last year for users under 18, but Tuesday's update goes one step further. Instagram will now promote and may even hide posts featuring strong language or which encourage harmful behaviors. Teens also will not be able to follow accounts that share age-inappropriate content, and a wide range of terms such as alcohol and gore will be blocked. Meta says that the changes are a response to parents who asked for clearer guidelines and more control over their children's Instagram experience. Indiana University has ordered the Indiana Daily Student to end all print publication less than 24 hours after the administration fired an advisor for the student newspaper. Recently, university leadership, the student media director, and editors of the paper have fought over what content gets printed, with administrators insisting that special editions should not include any news content. The situation escalated when IU fired the director of student media after he pushed back against the directive to remove news content. The co-editor-in-chief of the Indiana Daily Student stated, quote, "The media school thinks they can violate the First Amendment if it's under a business decision. That's a really, really dangerous thought process for administrators to have. The fact that they're trying to frame clear censorship as business is so disrespectful for every party involved."
The IDS is dealing with severe financial issues, especially over the past 5 years. In 2021, it was allowed to run a deficit for 3 years, and by 2024, that deficit had grown to over $500,000. This comes as many universities and companies are facing backlash for the First Amendment questions.
Well, in other free speech news, the Department of Defense has announced new rules that will affect the work of journalists covering the U.S. military. Here to break it down for us is market shares analyst Grace Elford. Grace, how are media companies reacting?
Thanks, Alex. Virtually every news outlet is refusing to sign the Pentagon's new press access rules. Back in September, the Pentagon announced new restrictions for reporters. This new agreement limits the types of questions and answers that can come from Department of Defense officials. This includes unclassified details about the military. The updated 21-page form also includes new restrictive security measures for reporters moving throughout the Pentagon building. The new policies come after leaks from the department. Back in March, the Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg was accidentally put into a Signal group chat with top military officials. The messages revealed plans for targets in Yemen. This led to a national security advisor, Michael Waltz, to leave his position. Almost every major media outlet has stated they will not comply with these new rules. These include right-leaning outlets such as Fox News, where Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was an on-air host for almost a decade. NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News Media released a joint statement on Tuesday saying, quote, "Today we join virtually every other news organization in declining to agree to the Pentagon's new requirements, which would restrict journalists' abilities to keep the nation and the world informed of important national security issues." Outlets had until Wednesday to agree with the restrictions. Only one conservative network, One American News, has been confirmed to agree to the terms. The Pentagon says the press has no greater right than the public to the building and that media access is a privilege. However, the new policies could mean less comprehensive coverage of the U.S. military.
Well, Grace, what exactly do these new rules say that news organizations are so against?
Well, Alex, like I mentioned earlier, the 21-page document is much longer than the previous one-page document the journalists were used to agreeing with. And it has a lot of restrictions on them moving throughout the building. They have to have an escort to take them to any interviews. And Department of Defense employees are now not allowed to disclose information without getting severe consequences.
Grace, these are pretty restrictive requirements that are pretty new. How are these journalists reacting to this new deadline?
So on Wednesday, approaching the deadline around 4 p.m., journalists kind of gathered together inside the Pentagon, bringing their belongings outside of their offices and turning in their press badges after what they see as such an infringement on their independent journalism. And while they're heartbroken, they would rather disagree to put up with these rules instead of not being able to do free independent journalism and give the public what they think they deserve.
And then obviously, this is big to have such less coverage of the U.S. military. How are media outlets planning to move forward?
The media outlets are still planning to cover the military. It's just going to be unclear how much comprehensive coverage they can get without being able to access the Pentagon and get that insider intelligence and interviews with public officials. I'm going to send it back over to you guys at the desk.
Thank you so much, Grace. Coming up on Market Shares, hope you're hungry. Onondaga County's first Shake Shack opened its doors earlier this week. How could this impact Syracuse's economy when we return? Welcome back into Market Shares. Earlier this week, Onondaga County's first Shake Shack opened in DeWitt. $1 for every sandwich sold on opening day was donated to the Food Bank of Central New York.
Now, the restaurant had been closed and vacant since 2019, but now it joins other fast food chains in the area, including Chick-fil-A, Chipotle, and Burger King. The New York City-based chain opened its first store back in 2001 and now has more than 400 locations worldwide. So, Alex, this is not something new. We're used to seeing some of these higher-end fast food. We've had a Chick-fil-A open over the summer right across the street from the Shake Shack. So this is really, I think, really good thing for the economy. This is these newer high-end restaurant or fast food restaurants that are really making this area seem like a really propped up area now.
Yeah, I feel like the cardinal example when you hear about this is Starbucks. When the community has a Starbucks, it kind of shows there's economic development, there's people who go there. But any number of these places like Shake Shack, Chipotle, ones that aren't maybe a McDonald's or a Burger King, they're not expensive food, but they're higher end fast food. It's a really good economic sign.
Yeah, and this is really nothing new. I'm really I'm honestly excited to see the Shake Shack. We can looking for some new food options here to eat, and maybe DoorDash. Maybe we'll get a Waymo to deliver some of my new food from Shake Shack coming up.
Yeah, driverless car bringing you food, nothing better than that. Well, that's all the time we have for you on this episode of Market Shares. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CitrusTV News and like us on Facebook. I'm Alex Burstein.
And I'm Ethan Kraut. Have a great night, Syracuse.